Hello everybody, my name is Benjiro and let's talk video games. Today we have a very special episode. We're gonna unwrap these games about months. Yeah?
So Benji, instead of unwrapping all those fancy shiny new ones, how about finishing some of these games instead?
Yeah, those. I don't think we're gonna finish those anytime soon. But that does give me a good idea. Let's talk about the games we loved but didn't finish.
Soft, pink and cute as a button. And made of yarn! But I never managed to finish it. Let's take a look at Kirbys Epic Yarn. I have always been a fan of Kirby games, ever since I saw someone play Kirby's Dream Land on the Game Boy. Kirby is just this pink ball of cuteness that you can't help but love. Even for me, someone who hated the color pink for a long time, loved Kirby. It was the only pink thing allowed in my life. The first Kirby game I owned myself was Kirby Nightmare in Dreamland for the GBA, and I played it from start to finish a bunch of times. Same goes for a lot of Kirby games that came after that one. Then came the Wii, and with it the motion controls. A lot of people were excited about it, but I was among those that wasn't all that thrilled by the idea of wiggling a stick at the TV screen. I was scarred, you might say, by Twilight Princess, and so when Kirby came, I was kind of scared that it might have the same effect. For two reasons. One, was it going to be heavily reliant on the motion controls I didn't like? And two, what was up with the style? Kirby Epic Yarn isn't like any of the Kirby games that came before it. Kirby is obviously still there, and so are all the iconic characters we all know and love. But instead of a pink ball of rubbery goo that eats his enemies, Kirby is now made of yarn, and no longer eats his enemies. Instead, he unravels them and uses his yarn power to progress through the level. I started it with some anxiety, but quickly started loving the game. I played it a lot, but at some point, I just forgot about it. It wasn't until I took a look at the library of games we have and saw the title that I thought, I forgot about that one. In conclusion, I have no real reason why I never finished this game other than forgetting about it, so hopefully I'll remember it now and will finally be able to put it on my finish list.
One of the games I used to love but never finished is right here. Teenage Mutant Hero Turtles on NES. And just being able to play a game with my favorite characters in it was enough for little Benji. Fighting Bebop and Rocksteady, saving April, and later on Splinter was everything I ever needed and wanted out of a Turtles game. I never finished it because the game is hard. I never made it much further than the dam level back in the day. I do remember at some point being able to make it to the next section, but since I never owned the game but rented it from the video store on multiple occasions, I think I just didn't have enough time with the game to finish it. Will I ever finish this game? No, I don't think so. Since then, better Turtle games came out. The nostalgia goggles for this game are long gone, and the game isn't as great as I used to think. I think I'm okay with letting this one go.
One of the games I regret not finishing is this one, Breath of Fire 2. This GBA RPG is actually a re-release of the SNES game released in December 1994 in Japan. It came to the US a year later and was released in Europe half a year after that in April of 1996. The version I played was the GBA game, which was released in June of 2002. Breath of Fire 2 is a direct sequel to Breath of Fire 1, but even though I never played the first game, I had no trouble understanding the story of the second. The RPG is turn-based, but the combat is fast and a lot of fun, and the characters you get to know are all diverse and have a good background story. However, despite all of this, by the end of the game, the combat, though still fast-paced, gets tedious as you have to grind a lot to even attempt the final dungeon. It is because of this that in the end, I gave up on the game. It is now available on Switch and I am tempted to try again, but if I'll ever finish it, I honestly don't think so.
Here's a game I didn't finish because it physically hurt me. Metroid, Samus Returns. Another one of my all-time regrets is Metroid Samus Returns on the 3DS. I've never been much of a Metroid guy. All the Metroid Prime games could have easily made it onto this list. But the one that captivated me the most is Metroid Samus Returns. The game, unlike most other Metroid games, kept me glued to my 3DS for a long play session. I loved the exploration, the new acquired abilities, the combat and control scheme. This was the first time I really played a 2D Metroid, and I loved every moment. The series never popped up on my radar when I had the NES, and the next console cycle my parents got us a Mega Drive. So I never played Super Metroid. This was my first experience with a 2D Metroid, and I just couldn't put my 3DS down. The reason this game is unfinished had nothing to do with the game, but more with the platform it was on. Long play sessions on the 3DS, even the XL, is kind of hurting my hands. At some point my hands started cramping up so much that I had to put it down for several days. Days turned into weeks. By the time I tried to play the game again, I was completely lost. I didn't know where to go. I tried to figure it out, but after a while, I gave up. So I just closed the 3DS and never played Metroid Samus Returns again. Hopefully they will re-release the game one day, or I could give it another shot, but limit my playtime to shorter but more frequent play sessions. I could try a new 2DS and hope it's more suited to my giant hands, but for now the game will remain unfinished.
This game comes from my favorite game series on the GBA, but I never managed to finish it. Golden Sun Dark Dawn for the Nintendo DS. Golden Sun is an amazing RPG original to the GBA. It released in August 2001 and the sequel in 2002. I first played the second game in the series as the store clerk convinced me it was a standalone title. I soon found out it wasn't, as the game started exactly where the first one had left off. And I quickly brought the first game in the series as well. I loved the entire story from start to finish, so when the DS game was announced I was extremely excited. It was set to release in October 2010 in Japan and in December for Europe. As I was studying Japanese at that moment, and had been able to play through a different RPG in Japanese, I was confident I could play Golden Sun Dark Dawn in Japanese as well. I asked a friend to buy it for me and take it with her in March of 2011 when she would come to visit me from Japan. I was excited to play the game, but was sadly disappointed by myself mostly, as the game was just too difficult for me to understand. With no voice acting and just reading, I ended up having to look up every other kanji to figure out what was being said, which took almost all the magic out of the game for me. I really want to play the game and finish it, as I loved the series up till that point, but as long as I don't have an English version, this game will remain unfinished for me.
Obviously this list isn't complete without a modern release. Here it is, Paper Mario the Origami King. After a couple of less than stellar Paper Mario games, I really did like this one. Yes, it has its issues. There are no RPG mechanics, at least not really. Most fights in the game are pointless and only provide coins, but I do love the game overall. The paperback mechanics are refreshing, the game has legitimately funny writing, the side characters have developed stories, and the boss fights in this game are really inventive and well made. So why did I never finish it? This is maybe due to the Switch being a console and handheld hybrid, but I'd love to play this game on my commute to work. I played it on the train and therefore was able to play a little over an hour a day. I think this game worked well in handheld mode and didn't really have any benefit from playing it docked at all. Unfortunately, when the pandemic hit and we went into lockdown, I started working from home and the game was forgotten in favor of games that offered a more console experience. I hope when this pandemic is finally over, I'll be back on my commute and pick it back up. But to be realistic, there's a danger that when the time comes, there are other games I might play and Paper Mario will end up unfinished.
This game I started, never finished. Yoshi's Crafted World. And why? Let's find out. Yoshi's Crafted World is a really adorable platformer on the Nintendo Switch. It was released in March of 2019 and was just the cutest game. Yoshi himself is cute as a button, and pair that with adorable cardboard aesthetics and a Poochie friend, and you got yourself a game that makes you go, "Aww," a lot. The game is fairly easy to play through. It doesn't have difficult puzzles or platforming sections, and it's easy to get to the end of each level with full health, even if you don't use one of the many cutesy costumes you can unlock for protection. This is also where the problem lies for me. As the game is easy, I wanted to make it as challenging as I could by wanting to complete every single level in the game. This meant getting all of the red coins, all of the flowers, and finishing each level with full health. This on its own isn't that difficult. As I mentioned, ending with full health is easy and most coins and flowers are easy to find. You might have to backtrack once or twice, but that's it. Next to the normal levels, there's the backside of each level in which you have to find 3 Poochie puffs within a certain time to get all the flowers. This is also not too difficult as the puffs are easy to find. I had to restart a level a couple of times to get the puffs quickly enough to reach the time limit, but that was it. The bottleneck for me were the extra quests you can accept in every world. There are these little robots that ask you to find certain objects in specific levels, and this is where my enjoyment of the game kind of ended. After going through a level 100 times to find one teeny tiny little thing is just not fun. And the worst thing is, I didn't have to do it. I made myself do it to get the most out of the game, and instead I just caused myself to burn out on it. Out of all the games I've talked about, this is the one I regret not finishing the most. I was having so much fun with it, but my need to complete it left me with a bitter taste in my mouth. I owe it to the game to pick it up again and finish it, if I ever muster the courage to play it without collecting every single flower.
A game I always wanted to finish but was never able to, and I really hope to finish it one day, is right here. Super Mario RPG, Legend of the Seven Stars. I never played Super Mario RPG when I was young. I was a Sega kid back then, and my friends that did own a Super Nintendo never owned the game since it never got a European release, so I only got my copy a few years back. I found an American copy on a Dutch auction site and bought it. Little did I know that I still wouldn't be able to play it. The game had a special chip that makes it not run on a European console, even if you have a SNES region converter. So I bought a US Super Nintendo off Amazon just to play it. When that came in a few weeks later, I opened the box to find it in pieces. After that disaster, I decided to buy a Retron 5, just so I could play Super Mario RPG. When I was finally able to play it, I loved everything about it. I loved the colorful artwork, the music, great dialogue, and fun combat system. All in all, it's a great game. The reason I stopped playing was because being unable to play it for so long and it just sitting in our collection. The fact that I had to buy a Retron 5 just for that game had a side effect. It got me to look into other possibilities the Retron 5 would provide us. I started tinkering with translation patches for some of our Japanese games. And I also started to reacquire some games I loved back in my early Mega Drive days. So due to the versatility of that console, Mario RPG fell to the sidelines. I will pick it back up. I owe it to myself to play that game and hopefully, and eventually finish Mario RPG. So here's our list of games we loved but never finished. Tell us yours down in the comments below. And don't forget to like, subscribe and hit that bell. Hope to see you guys next time. Bye bye.